Hey folks, we hope you're enjoying the Automation Loop. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And leave comments below. Did we say something you agree with? Let us know. Did we say something that's ridiculous? Also let us know. Maybe we'll address it in a future show.
Hello and welcome to the September 2025 episode of the Automation Loop, the show that brings you the inside scoop of what's going on here at Network to Code and the industrial complex that is network automation. We're your hosts, Tim.
And Tim. And this month we're talking about seismic shifts in the attitude towards automation and how choosing to do nothing with regards to automation or explicitly choosing to not automate is a deliberate and strategic choice that could lead to your or your firm's obsolescence. Hey, Tim, AutoCon 4 is coming up.
It is. And it's kind of amazing to think that way back in the dark ages of November 2023 was the first AutoCon 0. And something we've noticed over the last 2 years is that at the first AutoCon, we had about 300 people show up. And each AutoCon since then has grown significantly in growth to this point now, where 2 years later, we're going to be at AutoCon 4. And it looks like we're probably going to have maybe 900 people, maybe 1,000 folks showing up, which is going to be amazing. By the way, if you're not scheduled to go, get a ticket. Absolutely show up. It's an amazing event. It's really incredible to be surrounded by folks that work in network automation like the rest of us here.
Yeah, it really is. And as sales engineers, Tim, we've been here for, I think I'm 4.5 years and you're longer than that. We are at a pretty unique place to observe what's happening because we are the ones talking with customers every day, dozens and dozens of customers per year, understanding what their needs are, trying to sell the concept of automation. And what I started to notice, well, I'll say this, back before about a year ago, as part of that pitch for selling automation, we had to include a slide and a story around why automate? Why should I automate? And that always was part of what we talked to them about. It was describing the value of automation and why you should automate. I noticed around this time last year, I'll say September of last year, I stopped having to make that slide and stopped having to craft that story around why should I automate? And I didn't really notice this until March of this year, where I said, wow, I haven't had to tell the why should I automate story for about 6 months. It seems like something is changing with regards to attitudes towards automation in senior leadership.
Yeah, same for me. Even with the clients that I'm speaking with, I'm seeing the same as well. And just as another reference point, we attend major conference events like Cisco Live, for example. And I remember way back when I first started attending there for representing Network to Code, people would, almost everyone coming to the booth was saying like, who are you? What do you do? Never heard of Network to Code. Now I would say, you and I were both there in June this year of 2025. We probably had way more than half the folks approaching the booth either knew about Network to Code or Nautobot. They were familiar with one or the other already, which is really an interesting indicator of the industry in general that, folks are actually starting to pay attention now.
Yeah, it's a striking change where at conferences, we don't have to answer the question, who are you and why are you here? It's refreshing not to have to tell that story or to tell it a lot less at least.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, it's something to just keep in mind for those of you out there that sometimes, you might be in a smaller organization, or maybe you're the only network automation person within your large organization. And you kind of feel like you're on an island and you're like, is there anybody else out there doing this? Does anybody else care? And the answer is yes, absolutely. Our space is growing. Our vertical is growing. People are beginning to really understand the power of network automation and why we want to do it, why it makes sense. Bringing this idea of DevOps, something that, the systems folks created, 30 years ago, we're finally getting around to it and finally bringing it into our space. And it actually, is becoming something really powerful for us.
Yeah. So the message is going out now. You heard it here first. Folks, the ground is shifting with regards to automation and attitudes toward automation. Why should I automate is not nearly the thing it used to be. People understand that it's not a choice anymore. You have to automate. And this brings me also to another thing that we realized as we were starting to tell this story is at this point, choosing to not automate, one, that is an explicit choice, and two, it is a strategic choice. If you are not automating, get ready because it's a good bet your competitors are.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're simply not going to be able to keep up. What we see coming in the trend over network consumption and network usage is that our device count is simply continuing to grow. And in fact, that growth rate is accelerating. There is no way you're going to keep up if you continue to do things the old fashioned way. We have to learn how to automate and to use automation in the network space. Granted, we need to do it carefully, but it's absolutely the future and we need to embrace that idea, not fight it.
Yep. There's been some hard lessons learned along the way for those who have chosen to not automate. And I think now we don't have to tell that story anymore. And it's refreshing. And I want folks to know the ground is changing. You heard it here first.
Hey, Tim, so you mentioned something interesting there just a second ago, which was that at this point in time, people that are not using automation in the network space, it's actually like a strategic or intentional choice. That is, you're actively saying, I'm not going to automate. One of our colleagues here at Network to Code, Chris Murray, he just recently had a blog post about the cost of doing nothing in network engineering, manual versus automated approaches. And it's actually exactly on topic here with that. And we actually didn't plan that. It just sort of happened that way. And kind of interesting thought here. And just curious what your thoughts were when you were reading through this blog post. Any comments?
Yeah, I think this ties in nicely with what we happened to be just talking about earlier, in that this is a strategic choice to not do or to do. And if you don't do it, there's some things that are going to happen for you. At one point in here, he argues that you risk obsolescence. You will become obsolete as an organization if you don't automate, if you choose not to automate. And by the way, doing nothing is a choice. That is choosing not to automate as well. And I also like what he talks about here as far as how it affects our network engineering brethren, where their skill sets need to evolve. And let me describe a bit about what that means. It does not necessarily mean that as a network engineer, you need to become a developer. It is not what that means. What it means is your skill set as a network engineer is still needed, but it's going to be expressed differently. You're going to spend your time doing different things. So instead of being on the CLI, banging out things, making fixes manually, you're going to be doing things like advising developers on how network engineering works, doing things like helping craft perhaps Jinja templates for configuration management and things like that. What are your thoughts, Tim?
So yeah, I mean, what do we say to the old school router jockey that's like, but I like getting on the CLI. That's what I like doing. This has always been one of those things, those objections that I hear, and I honestly don't really know how to respond to it. To me, it feels a bit like saying, but to me, it feels a bit like saying, but I like shoveling coal into my old coal burning furnace to heat my house in the winter because it's so much fun and I get a lot of exercise and it's really cool and I get to inhale all this coal dust. Like for example, like it just really, you want to stay back in the dark ages? But I don't have a nice way to articulate that, right?
Yeah, and I think this is where tough love needs to come into the picture here. As a network engineer, if you do not evolve the way you can express your skill set, you will find yourself with fewer opportunities. That's just not me saying that. That is the marketplace talking to you. Imagine if you were like an old school telephone tech back in 1980s, and someone is going to tell you, hey, this voice over IP, this is going to be a thing or whatever. And you're like, nah, I'm going to stick here doing this, this cabling and stuff, copper wires everywhere. And, wow, look what you would be left with, 20 years from, 2010, you would have less options.
It is just this idea that, hey, you know what? I appreciate that you enjoy, perhaps, getting in there and manipulating Cisco syntax, for example, right? But like that, our life is evolving. Like we have to evolve with the technology and what we do in our roles here. And the way that we manage networks is simply changing and we have to adjust to that. I think it is a bit of the tough love, like, hey, hear you, but sorry, get on board.
And let's also look at this in terms of certifications. Oftentimes what I hear is, well, I'm Juniper Juniper certified. I'm Cisco certified. I need to work on Cisco's or Junipers to be relevant. That is absolutely not the case. I myself have a JNCIE, and what I learned getting my JNCIE was that I learned two things really well. One, I learned the Juniper CLI very well. And two, I learned higher level engineering methods and tactics and structures as I was going through that. What is valuable in today's market is the latter. I, as an engineer, can express the skills I got through my JNCIE studies at the higher level, at the architectural level, at the engineering level. The CLI knowledge, that is at this point a very low value skill because the CLI is on its way out as a major way to interact with the network at scale. It's simply going to be irrelevant.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And even as I think back, like in my certification journey, starting off with a CCNA first, and then eventually CCNP, and moving through all different versions of those, I can remember back in the early days, like there was actually one of the tests that we had to take in order to get, I think my first CCNP was a test around like which Cisco model would you choose given a certain situation. And honestly, I can't imagine a more useless skill set as a network engineer than which Cisco model I should choose. Like what? That has nothing to do with network engineering. That has to do with network marketing, and how much dollars Cisco is going to get because I buy this switch or that switch. And I mean, first of all, just Google it, or now Copilot it or Gemini it, or B, ask your rep, right? Like your rep should be the one telling you which Cisco model you should buy, given the the certain set of situations you have with the hardware you might need. So you can see, and I know they did eventually drop that test, right? That test is no longer part of the CCNP, for example.
Well, that's fantastic. Well done. And that's a wrap for this month's episode of the Automation Loop.
As always, we'd love to hear your thoughts about network automation, related topics, challenges. Drop us a comment, leave us a note, share your insights, reach out here or on the NTC forums. And until next time, keep automating, keep iterating, and stay curious.